Hi, André.
Hi, Lara.
I'm very grateful that you took the time to join me on this conversation, this program entitled Mindful Leaders Inherited Legacies. You are from Belgium. You are the owner and the founder of André Gumuchdjian, and basically, namely, continuing the family business that your grandfather, Bahram Gumuchdjian, started when he moved from Istanbul or Constantinople to Belgium, or Amsterdam and then Belgium. Then your father continued the business, and then you actually are now here in this business as well. You know, recently I've noticed that you've been pretty much active in Armenia these past few years. You started implementing in different programs in Artsakh, in Armenia. You were a board member for a couple of years for Tufenkian Foundation. You are also now recently the owner, or the founder, I should say, of the organization, the not-profit organization, My Forest Armenia. So I know you've met with CivilNet before to talk about My Forest Armenia. Today's conversation is mostly about getting to know you, André.
Okay.
You started this business. I want to know, was this imposed on you for you to continue the business? Was it implied, and was it really, were you really true to your heart when you began André Gumuchdjian, or when you continued your father's business?
Actually, that's an interesting question. I know this is something very much I wanted to do. I thought this was interesting, and still today, I find it fascinating business. It does have, you know, one very big advantage as far as I'm concerned, is that it allows me a lot of free time. I tend to be pretty well organized, I think, and so I guess I can devote almost 90% of my time to other causes, and that's also interesting in the sense that I don't need to do the day-to-day job, and I can delegate in my office. So that is an interesting part, but I'm still fascinated by that.
So you don't regret having to be part of this family business? Was it a part of your calling? Do you know what your calling was or is at this moment?
Yeah, I guess calling, I would not say calling, but it's meant as it's an interesting question, because actually just after graduating, I thought of becoming a movie director.
Interesting.
So, yeah, and really for a while I toyed with that idea, and then it was very funny because then I saw a few of the Steven Spielberg movie, and I remember thinking to myself, he stole all my ideas. Of course, he didn't steal anything, right, because, but he was really, it really made a mark on me, and I thought he's doing a great job, so I can concentrate on the family
the
business.
reason why I'm curious to know about your calling, or what actually nudged you in this area, is because when I got to know you several years back, your story was actually pretty fascinating, because I understood about your family more. Your grandparents were born during or before the Armenian genocide in Constantinople. They moved to Belgium. Your father is born in Belgium. Your mother, Anita, is born in Istanbul. Yet, despite this whole rich history, you and your sisters grew up, and your brother grew up, basically not knowing anything about your heritage. Your parents made sure that you integrated fully into the Belgian culture. You know, it's as though their past was erased, and they wanted to make sure that you were a full Belgian, French Belgian, and nothing about your history, nothing about the language or their heritage. There were some snippets of, making dolma, making chorek, but it was primarily, this was the environment in which you grew up. Why do you think that was the case? You can't answer on behalf of your parents or your grandparents, but for you, reflecting back, why was the case that you should not have any sense of your Armenianness growing up as a child?
I think I spoke about it recently with my mother, and I asked why, and also speaking with a friend, and I think it's really part of that generation. In the 60s, early 60s, it was not well, let's say, well viewed as being different. You had to conform, you had to be assimilated. And my mother very much felt strongly for that. And it's funny because my Armenian teacher recently told me, and when she heard my mother with a very strong
accent.
R accent, she says, "Now I understand why she wanted you to assimilate fully, because she was afraid." And her formative experience was if you don't have the right accent, people will make fun of you, and so she didn't want us to have any accent when speaking French. And recently I presented her somebody else, and who's French born and speaks perfectly French and Armenian without any accent. So I told her, you see, that's perfectly possible.
But you have a name, Gumuchdjian. Gumuchdjian is not an easy name in Belgium. So growing up, did no one ever ask you, where's this name from? Or did you not feel like you need to understand what it represented for you?
No, I guess, no. Growing up, I never felt any particular discrimination or any particular, finger pointing about my name or my origin. No, that didn't happen. May have had, maybe slightly at exams we were preparing, final exams at the end of school, that I felt maybe, one of the reasons for some of the harsh grading could have come from that. But.
So something discriminatory. People tend to suppress memories, but emotions can be transmitted. Do you believe that children or grandchildren could carry the emotional burden of their forefathers if they have witnessed or survived any kind of collective trauma?
Yes, this is actually a very interesting question. The thing is whether parents transmit willingly, orally, or don't transmit, it will come through. It will come through. Transmission is something that happens, regardless of what the parents are actually saying. And I experienced that. As a matter of fact, this gives me goosebumps when I'm speaking to you. I witnessed that in my years when I was the vice president of the Armenian committee. We went into a Jewish family, and it was the grandfather, and then the father and the son. And the grandfather had participated in some of the rebellious acts against the Nazis. And before the Nazis came to Belgium, and for the first time he was explaining this to his because I prompted. I was myself very curious, and we were like about 20 people sitting around a table. And then when all this news came out, I asked the father, so what did you think? Well, he said, it's the first time I hear this, but we knew there was something, but we didn't know exactly what. So the transmission happens, if not in details. You don't know the details, but you know there's something, and you feel there's something, and that is being transmitted. It's very much, very well transmitted. Again, regardless of whether the parent says something specifically or doesn't say anything.
Right, so it's felt.
Everything will be transmitted.
It's felt. Even the unsaid is felt. The unsaid, when we're not even, yeah.
Absolutely, the unsaid is transmitted.
Right. I have here the book by Alice Miller, The Drama of the Gifted Child. I had read this several years back, and there were certain passages that resonated with me that I'd like to read to you.
Okay.
It says, in order to become whole, we must try in a long process to discover our own personal truth, a truth that may cause pain before giving us a new sphere of freedom. We can repair ourselves and gain our lost integrity by choosing to look more closely at this knowledge that is stored inside our bodies and bringing this knowledge closer to our awareness. What did this book do to you? I know you've read it as well. And we talked about this, and there was some connection there. Why was this book special for you?
This book is very special because you realize the influence of one another within a family. And it was very startling for me, certainly, because you realize maybe some of the the impacts that my parents could have had on me or had on me. And then you realize at the same time, because you're a father yourself, the impact that you yourself has had on your children. And that is very confronting, because you realize that, wait, I probably did many things that were not right. But there is one thing that is very interesting in this book, was actually in the second page, the first or second page. It says you can have access, as you say, to being whole, because we have a key, and that key is your memory. And unfortunately, when I read that, I was deeply confronted, because for the most part, I forgot what happened before I was 12. In large part, and you know, in a way, I've learned to live with it. When I speak to my sisters, they remember many details, many details, and I said, "You really what?" It's like, for me, it's like a big blank, and it's confronting in a way, because Alice Miller is saying that the key to becoming whole is having access to your memory. But if you don't have access to your memory, then what? How
can one gain access to their memory if they've suppressed it, or if they just feel that, you know what, I don't want to know anything about that. I have better things to do. I have a family to take care of. I have a business to run. I have to move forward. How do you actually do that? How is that triggered? You can't.
You can't. It's very interesting, because the brain and the subconscious is so strong. I mean, as I've told you, I've went to a therapist for about 4 or 5 years, and this was really very interesting. For me, it was like going back to university, except that not only you're learning about general things, you're learning about yourself, and then you realize that there you know, many things
you discover about yourself.
That you discover about yourself, but there are many mechanisms whereby your subconscious is subconsciously, let's say on a second level, protecting or wants to protect yourselves from thoughts that may be painful.
Of course.
So as you were saying, I don't want to know about this, I want to move forward. That's one thing. But it's also like, I want to know, but you can't. There's no way you can gain access. Those who say, I don't want to know, let's say their subconscious is much more closer to their conscious behavior. But here, I could say, I would like to know, and there's no way. In other words, the doors are shut, tight, and you can't gain access to it. And I suppose you can, but these are even longer processes if you want to get to it. But I guess I've learned enough to find it very interesting and fascinating. But I guess, you know.
So let me help you with this. Let's go back to how your process of self-discovery came up. The first real history or Armenian history that you encountered was related to the book that you read, 40 Days of Musada, when you were 16. Yes. Am I remembering correctly?
Oh my God, okay. I'm still impressed at all the information you remember. Could be
people's stories are actually fascinating for me. So 16, despite the blank that you have, 16 you take the initiative to read this book. Then in your university years you go to Harvard, and you discover that there is a course to learn Armenian. And you take the initiative on your own to learn Armenian. For you, that was kind of like a quest to discover your identity, as you say. Then, but really, it was more in your late 40s that you felt this urge to really understand who you are as an Armenian. For me, that's fascinating. A person, until their late 40s, they realize, I need to know more about this. I need to know, really, there's this sense of urgency that I have to understand who I am. What happened? Can you tell me what happened in that process of your late 40s where you felt some kind of an awakening?
Let me first start with the 40 Days of Mustada. And it's right, this is probably formative also in a way. Because I remember, of course, the book was fascinating. I really loved it. I loved also the way how it starts. You know, it starts with a person very much a little bit like me, not really very aware of his Armenian origin. And he's walking the streets in Paris and picks up at these many bookstores in the Seine, and he picks up a book on how to prepare for war. And he's just walking around there, and again, not conscious of his Armenian identity, a little bit perhaps like me. And as it turns out, he will become one of the leader of the Musarak rebellion, and thanks in a way to this book that he had bought at the scene while walking down on the riverbanks on a Sunday morning. So the story itself is fascinating. What was also interesting is that I noticed my mother, whispering, to other friends, Armenian friends, that, he's reading the 40 Days of Musadak, and then I realized that this was an important moment. So why was this so important? In university, yes, I wanted to learn Armenian. That this is both my parents were speaking everyday Armenian between themselves. They just didn't want to speak with us in Armenian. And then in the late 40s, as you say, this discovery. It's not a conscious effort. It's like I feel very much. The image that I have is of the sea turtles hatching. They go. They hatch in the sand about 50 to 100 meters away from the water, and then as the eggs hatch, the turtles go back to the sea. You don't understand why. Nobody's telling them. They're not conscious that, oh, I need to go to the sea. It just happens. In the same way, it's an urge. I guess it would say, I wonder if it is instinct, or it could be something different. But it's something natural. I think later in life, as you grow older, 40s, 50s, you realize that your roots are important. Because this is connected with the identity, and it's connected. So tell me,
this is a good point. Tell me about identity. What is your identity? What was your epiphany then, trying to discover it, and what do you feel your identity is now?
I definitely feel more and more. I definitely feel more and more Armenian. That's for sure. I definitely love the land. There's also. I recently bought and I'm renovating a house in Ushi, and I'm contemplating that valley all the way up to the Ararat, and to think that people were passing there, armies were passing there 2,000 years ago, conquering one part, going back to the other part, and that you're really at the center of history, and I guess my history as well. If what I'm saying is true, that your memory is transmitted even without saying, even you are transmitting things to me, or I may be transmitting things to you, even though we never speak about it. So the transmission of a people is collective, and I very much believe that this transmission is happening not only between parents and persons, but as a society. So I feel I like it very much here. I love it very much. Of course, I was born and grown in Belgium. I studied in the U.S., but and I like being there. But definitely. So
you these past few years, you've become pretty active with this land in Armenia. You're coming and going more often. You're here maybe probably as much as you are in Belgium or in the US or anywhere else that you are with your work. You're building this home in Ushi. You implemented different projects even in Artsakh. Why all of a sudden this, especially when people are thinking, I don't see a future in Armenia. Why are you actually coming towards Armenia and wanting to build? Private, non-profit, you're pretty active.
Yeah,
why is that?
That's true. Well, Artsakh and I think it's very important for diaspora Armenians because it really represents a victory on the genocide. Because for once we're gaining back land. we recently have lost some, but this is very important because we're gaining back lands, and even if this is an imperfect peace treaty, we're still gaining back. Also, you have to realize, I mean, and I realize that I'm not interested where Armenia will be in 5 or 10 years. I'm interested where Armenia will be in 100 years. Armenia, this land, and our people, we have a 3,000 years history. I don't know if you realize how long is 3,000. And when, for example, speaking the language, which I learned and now speaks, I will not say fluently, but almost, and this is something you learn, but it's you have to learn it. Each generation has to learn it. It's enough that one generation stops using the language, that the language disappear. The 3,000 years is not a guarantee for the continuation of it, to begin with. But this long history is in itself is a motivator to be interested. There's a second element, which is very interesting, is that we are actually here, and even more in Artsakh, but even here, we're building a new country. How much more fascinating can it be than that? We're building a new country, a country that well, I would not say did not exist, but a new country where we're freer to operate, where our culture can thrive, and this in itself is a very motivating factor. It's very interesting to do, and there's a great thing here in Yerevan or in Armenia. There is an energy. There's a special energy that you don't find that I don't find in Belgium or even
André,
in New York.
I mean, you described this, and I'm thinking, after the 44-day war in Nagorno-Karabakh, would you continue to feel this? Do you still feel that we're still building, we're still moving forward? There is that energy still left compared to pre-September and after. Tell me what you're seeing, what you're feeling.
There's still so much more to build. There's so many things that are happening and that should happen and that are happening. And the interesting things about the energies that the people come here, people from diaspora come here. They come here for a reason, because they want to discover themselves. So that's why it's interesting, and that's why I say there's an energy here, because sometimes I'm stopped in the streets and you obviously see there are Armenians from, you can spot the Americans, or you can spot the Argentinians, and they will spontaneously start talking to you. Oh, where you're from, what you're doing, and then of course the question goes back. And so that's why there's an energy. I used to say every trip I came here, there was a new idea that's something that needed to be done, and that I guess I started doing. So
right.
I'm quite active
right.
with that. But I feel there are many things that can be done, and the country, regardless, is going forward. And I witness this everywhere. The construction is going on, art exhibitions are taking place. There's creativity.
So, what piece of advice would you give me for a person that feels is still in a mourning phase? Mourning as in, I'm still trying to process and make meaning of what's happened. Despite the 3,000 years, this fear of loss, this fear of, are we able to continue the next 3,000 years? What piece of advice would you give me?
Well, the thing is, I tend to be very positive, and I remember this was I connected with what Rafi was saying. I was watching the other interview. I feel I'm generally a positive person. What I say is that you can view everything as positive. We've lost maybe a battle, but let's not lose the lesson. And the lessons are very obvious for everybody. We need to be better organized. We need to have not less, we need to have no corruption. we need to concentrate on the real data, on real facts. So let's not lose the lessons. Concentrate on the facts, learn from it, and move forward from it.
Right. I think we can have another hour or so of a discussion. I think conversations are really important to have because they give moments of having these aha moments and discussions. You think a lot about yourself as well, your inner world. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you, André, for this time, for being in the Ardian office to have this conversation. I look forward to meeting you again.
Thank you very much, Lara, and I'm very much happy that you remember so much, and I'm happy also to be here at this Ardian gallery. And if I may say a word, I think this exemplifies exactly what we're talking about. Vasco Brudjan took elements of writing from Narek Narekatsi. So how historical can it be, and reworked it into modern day contemporary piece of art. There you go. The transmission is happening. There you go, right in front of your eyes.
Thank you, André.
Thank you very much, Lara.